When Daniel confessed the betrayal, something inside Helena died. But what destroyed her wasn't the abandonment. It was the indifference. He didn't tremble, didn't cry, didn't hesitate. He simply said, "I love someone else." "I'm sorry, Helena." His sorry was so empty it echoed in her head like mockery. And when she told him she was pregnant, he only took a deep breath and looked away. That gesture, looking away, would become the wound that would never heal. Helena went through her first trimester like a ghost trapped inside her own body. The pain was sharp, the nausea constant, the fear relentless. While other mothers had hands to hold, words of comfort, someone bringing water at 3 a.m., Helena had only the echo of her own crying. She looked at herself in the mirror and didn't see a woman. She saw an empty vessel holding another life that didn't even know it was loved. And the past returned like a knife. Daniel's smile, his light touch on her waist, the promise, "I'll never leave you." The irony burned like acid in her throat. Memories that once were sweet now became torture. Whenever she tried to sleep, her mind threw images of him with the other woman. Muffled laughter, hands that once held hers, a love used, broken, and discarded. Larissa wasn't just the other woman. She was the kind of person who smiled without her eyes following. Rumor had it she had destroyed other relationships before, that she liked to control, manipulate, possess. Daniel was simply her next toy. When Helena learned her name, the sound felt like poison. Larissa, a name that clung to her like a shadow, like a scent, like a scar. Months passed and Helena grew weaker, physically, mentally, spiritually. One night, alone in the kitchen, she nearly fainted, collapsed to her knees, holding her belly, and for the first time, she spoke to the baby. "I'm sorry for all of this. I'm sorry you only have me." And there, on the cold floor, she realized it wasn't just Daniel who had abandoned her. The whole world seemed to have turned its back. On the other side of the city, the spark between Daniel and Larissa burned fast, and burned ugly. Larissa had secrets, debts, a history of manipulation, violent episodes. Daniel was swallowed by her darkness, fights, lies, scandals, and for the first time, he missed what he himself had destroyed. But regret didn't bring the way back. With time, Helena rose, but not as she once was. She carried a different look, deep, distant, almost hollow. The look of someone who learned to survive through pain. Her neighbor, Eduardo, began helping whenever he could. But Helena didn't trust easily. Not anymore. Pregnancy had changed her. She was stronger, but also more closed off, wary, marked. Joy had left her. What remained was endurance. When Helena discovered that Larissa had lied about being pregnant just to trap Daniel, something inside her snapped. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was something much more subtle and far more dangerous. Justice. Helena realized everything she suffered wasn't because of lack of love. It was a setup, poison, a lie. She placed her hands over her belly and whispered, "We will survive this, even if it has to be through hate." When Daniel showed up, broken, begging for forgiveness, Helena felt something strange. Not the urge to forgive, but the pleasure of seeing him shattered. He cried. He humbled himself, said life with Larissa had ruined him. "Helena, let me come back. For our child." Her answer was so cold, even the air seemed to freeze. "Now you want to be a father? Now?" He went silent. And for the first time, Helena saw fear in Daniel's eyes. She closed the door without hesitation. The sound echoed like a coffin being sealed. At 8 months pregnant, Helena had a severe hemorrhage. Ambulance, siren, lights cutting through the night. Her life hung by a thread. Her baby's by an even thinner one. Through fading consciousness, she heard voices. "Blood pressure dropping. Prepare for emergency. Hurry!" And somewhere deep inside, she thought, "If I don't make it back, at least he will live." Darkness swallowed her. Hours later, Helena opened her eyes. Silence. A gray room. The smell of disinfectant. And a hollow emptiness inside her body. Where is my baby?" she whispered. The nurse inhaled deeply before answering. And in that moment, Helena already knew. The baby had survived, but in critical condition, in the ICU. The doctor explained the night would decide everything, life or death. Helena cried like never before. Cried until she passed out from exhaustion. A few days later, Daniel returned to the hospital. He brought flowers, he brought regret, he brought tears. Helena, sitting beside the ICU crib, didn't even turn her head. Helena, please, can I stay? He whispered. She finally looked at him. In her eyes was a dark abyss so deep, Daniel stepped back. You have no place here, she said softly. A softness that hurt more than screaming. Not in my world, and not in my son's. Daniel cried, begged, touched the ICU glass as if trying to touch the baby. Helena stood, walked to the door, and closed it in his face. Without fear, without doubt, without looking back. The door stayed locked. And inside, Helena finally understood. Love can fail. The body can fail. The world can fail. But pain teaches you never to be destroyed the same way again. And in that silence, with the faint beeping of the ICU machines, Helena was reborn. Not to be happy, but to never be weak again. And Daniel left the hospital staggering, his swollen eyes, his short breath. But what hurt wasn't physical. It was the weight of what he had done. The following days, he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. His mind tortured him with scenes. Helena alone. The baby fighting for life. Larissa lying. Himself walking away. And the worst of all, the door closing. Sometimes he woke in the night thinking he still had a chance. But the truth came like a punch. You destroyed everything, and nothing comes back. And Daniel returned to the apartment he shared with Larissa, but she wasn't there. Instead, he found empty drawers, missing clothes, a letter on the floor. He opened it with shaking hands. You were useless, to me and to her. There's nothing left to take from you. Goodbye. Larissa had stolen what little money remained, taken electronics, left debts in his name. The abandonment he caused came back multiplied. When no Larissa, no Helena, no child, no home, no dignity. Daniel became a shadow. He spent days walking to the hospital, but never had the courage to go in. Sometimes he saw Helena from afar, sitting inside the ICU, but he couldn't approach. Just the thought destroyed him. She's better without me. And she was. One of the coldest nights of winter, Daniel received a phone call. It was the hospital. His name was still listed as an emergency contact. The doctor's voice was firm but dark. We need you here immediately. It's about the baby. Daniel ran as if his life depended on it. Arrived breathless, desperate, and learned. The baby survived, but was on the edge of severe sequelae. Still at risk. Helena was there, steady, staring through the ICU glass. Daniel tried to approach. She stepped away. You had your chance, she said. Never again. Daniel walked down the empty hallway, with his chest collapsing inward. And in that moment, he understood. Some mistakes have no return. Some doors never open again. After abandoning Daniel, Larissa thought she had won. Fast money. Freedom. No strings. But the past always collects its debts. Larissa owed money to dangerous people. For months, she had used Daniel as a shield. Without him, she was vulnerable. A man began looking for her. Someone she had deceived before. Someone she swore she'd never see again. The kind who doesn't forgive betrayal. Larissa began to panic. Moved 3 times. Deleted social media. Changed her name in databases. But those who owe don't disappear that easily. It was a quiet, cold dawn. Larissa heard footsteps in the hallway. Whispers. Something dragging across the floor. She thought it was paranoia until someone knocked hard on the door. Open. The voice was too calm. Larissa froze. The past had arrived. She fled through the back window, jumping fences, running barefoot through the street, never looking back. And that night, she finally tasted the fear she once served to others. Larissa hid for weeks in a small boarding room. Dark, filthy, windowless. She, who once destroyed families for amusement, now didn't even have a safe name. Until one day, she simply vanished. Some say she fled the country. Some say the man she owed found her. Some say she went insane and wandered the streets. No one knows. But one thing is true. No one ever the same again. Daniel survived, but he was never the same again. He carried a guilt that would never heal. A distant father, present only when Helena allowed. A man who, every night, closed his eyes and saw the door shutting again. Larissa? A fading rumor. A name stained with shadow. A living warning that evil always returns. And Helena held her child in her arms, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of life and victory. She won. The pained. Destiny is not cruel. Destiny is just. Cruel are the paths we choose. Winter had ended, but inside Helena there was still snow piled up. The baby, now named Davy, fought day after day in the neonatal ICU. Wires, alarms, cold lights, everything seemed stronger than he was. But Helena stayed there, unmoving, night and day, with swollen eyes and her whole soul focused on just one thing. I'm not losing you, too. Meanwhile, Daniel watched from a distance. Every now and then, he brought her a coffee and set it on a table. Helena never touched it, never thanked him, never asked for anything. He was a ghost, orbiting his own guilt. A nurse named Paula, who had seen a lifetime of sorrow, whispered, "This baby has a strength. I can't explain it. It's as if he's fighting for you." Helena held back her tears. She no longer had enough left to cry. And then, one day, while she sang softly to her son, a song her mother used to sing when she was little, the monitor beeped differently. Subtle, but different. The nurse smiled. "He reacted to your voice." Helena covered her mouth with her hand. It was the first good news in months. But good news never comes alone for too long. A visit that changed everything. On a gray afternoon, the social worker appeared. Documents in hand, a serious expression. "Mrs. Helena Duarte, we need to talk about the family situation." Helena froze. "Situation? What do you mean?" "There are protocols. With the father listed in the records, we need to evaluate his participation in the child's life and decide whether custody must be shared." The ground disappeared beneath Helena's feet. Shared custody. From the man who destroyed her. The man who vanished at the most critical moment. The man who chose another woman while she was pregnant with his own child. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "No, no, no. He is not taking my son." The social worker took a deep breath. "We're not saying that, but we need to hear both sides. He has rights." Helena felt the same pain she had felt when Daniel said, "I love someone else." It was as if the past was knocking at her door, hard. When Daniel entered the room, summoned by the social worker, Helena trembled. Not out of love, not out of hatred, but out of fear. Fear of losing the only thing she had left. Daniel was destroyed. Overgrown beard, wrinkled clothes, red eyes. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. "I don't want to take anything from you. Nothing. I just want him to live, and I want you to live too." Helena gripped the edge of the chair. "You have no place here," she said, in a calmness sharp as a knife. "Not in my life, and not in my son's." The social worker watched in silence. Daniel swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve it. But let me help. From afar, however you want. Please." Helena closed her eyes. And for the first time since it all began, she felt pity. Not love. Not reconciliation. Just the awareness of a human being broken by his own choices. When she opened her eyes, she said, "I will raise my son alone." Daniel nodded, tears running down his face. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Helena looked at him for a few seconds that felt like hours. "Feel it," she replied, "because it will never go away." When Davy woke up at 4 in the morning, Helena slept slumped in the chair beside the incubator. A soft cry woke her. A cry. Strong. Alive. She opened her eyes quickly and saw Davy. Tiny, struggling to lift his chest. breathing without assistance, kicking his little legs with force. "Oh my God!" the nurse said as she rushed into the room. "He's responding better than expected." Helena covered her mouth with her hands. The world melted around her. She pressed her fingers against the glass of the incubator. "You made it, my love. You made it." And in that moment, something inside her changed. Not hatred, not revenge, not pain, but rebirth. A final encounter, a few days later, with Davy more stable. Helena left the hospital for the first time. She needed to breathe. She needed to feel the wind on her face. But when she turned the corner, she found Daniel sitting on the sidewalk, holding a bottle of water, dark circles deep beneath his eyes. He stood up slowly. "Is he better?" Daniel asked in a low voice, as if afraid of the answer. Helena took a deep breath. "Yes, he's fighting, and he's going to live." Daniel closed his eyes in relief. "Thank you for taking care of him, for being strong when I was a coward." Helena looked at him as if she were seeing a stranger. "Daniel," she finally said, "you made your choice, and now you have to live with it. I don't wish you harm, but I also don't carry the weight of what you did to me anymore." The words came out light, free, without pain. Daniel, however, collapsed. He dropped to his knees, cried like he had never cried before. "Forgive me," he sobbed. "Please, forgive me." Helena crouched down, lowered herself to his level, and said with a serenity sharp enough to cut the air, "I don't need to forgive you in order to move on. My life no longer depends on you." Then she stood up. Daniel stayed there, broken, watching the only woman he had ever loved walk away carrying the strength he never had. With Davy in her arms a few days later, finally leaving the hospital, Helena realized she had won. Not because everything worked out, but because she kept going even when everything went wrong. Daniel walked down the street, watching her get into the taxi, the baby wrapped in a blue blanket. He didn't shout, he didn't run, he didn't beg, he simply accepted. Because some losses are permanent, and some women are reborn so strong that no one ever breaks them again. Spring arrived quietly. The trees bloomed along the streets as if the world were trying to apologize for everything it had taken from Helena. She walked with Davy in the stroller, still fragile, but stronger each day. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't weigh on her, and her chest didn't hurt when she breathed. She felt peace. Not happiness yet, but peace. And that was a beginning. One morning, Davy's stroller got stuck at the entrance of the small bakery where Helena had been buying bread long before everything happened. She pulled, pushed, muttered under her breath, but the wheel seemed caught on something invisible. "Let me help you." The voice was calm, steady, gentle. Helena lifted her eyes and saw a man holding the stroller carefully so he wouldn't wake the baby. He had deep brown eyes, a shy smile, and large hands marked with paint. Probably an artist, she thought. "Thank you," Helena said, still wary. "Misaligned wheel," he replied. "I can fix it, if you'd like." She hesitated. Distrust was still a natural reflex. But something about that man carried a serenity Helena couldn't remember feeling near anyone in a long time. "All right," she finally answered. As he adjusted the stroller, Davy slowly opened his eyes and stared at the stranger with the curiosity of someone seeing the world for the first time. The man smiled. "Hey, little guy." Helena noticed. It was the first time someone spoke to her son without looking at her with pity. "I'm Miguel," he said, standing up. "I work at the art shop on the corner. If you need help with the stroller again, stop by." Helena smiled for the first time in a long while. A small smile, but real. Miguel began showing up in small moments. A good morning at the bakery door. An umbrella offered when it started to rain. A pack of cookies left on the counter of his shop with a note. For when the nights get hard. Helena hadn't let anyone get close in months. But Miguel didn't invade, didn't pressure her, didn't demand anything. He simply existed, like a calm harbor after a stormy sea. Davy liked him, and that meant a lot. One afternoon, when a soft breeze passed through the square, Miguel found Helena sitting on a bench, rocking David gently. "You look tired." "That's because I am," she replied honestly. Miguel sat beside her, respecting the distance. "You went through a lot," he said, studying her expression with care. "But you're still standing. That's not a small thing." Helena felt her eyes burn. "Sometimes I think I won't make it," she confessed. Miguel looked at Davi. "But he thinks you will." Helena smiled sadly. "He deserves more." "He already has it," Miguel replied. "He has you." That phrase slipped into Helena like a warm bandage over an old wound. It was the first time in a long time that someone believed in her, without asking anything in return. The meetings became routine. The conversations grew longer. The silences between them were not uncomfortable. Helena began to look forward to the moments when Miguel appeared. When he touched her hand for the first time, helping her stand, it was a light, almost accidental touch, but her body reacted with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't replacement. It was rebirth. Over time, Daniel realized what was happening. He saw Helena and Miguel talking in the square, Davi laughing in the new friend's arms, and something inside him finally shattered. "Helena, who is he?" Daniel asked one day when he tried to get closer. Helena didn't step back. She didn't falter. "Someone who knows how to value who I am," she replied, holding Davi firmly. Daniel lowered his head. He finally understood. His place in Helena's heart had died forever. And what was being born in its place was sweet, light, strong. On a sunny day, Davi gave his first big smile when he saw Miguel. A full smile, warm, alive. Helena watched, surprised. Miguel froze, moved. "He smiled at me," he said, his voice almost breaking. Helena felt her heart melt for the second time in her life. The first was when Davi was born. The second, in that very moment. A month later, Miguel invited her out. "Not as a date," he said, not wanting to scare her. "Just a walk, the three of us." Helena took a deep breath. She looked at Davi in her arms, then at Miguel, and for the first time in a very, very long time, she said yes. The softest yes, the most important, the most liberating of her life. It came like morning. Before they knew it, Helena was smiling more naturally, sleeping better, eating better, living better. Miguel treated Davi as if he were his own, with patience, with tenderness, with deep respect for Helena. And she finally understood. Not every man hurts. Not every story ends in pain. Not every love destroys. Some heal. On a calm night, already together for a few months, Miguel held her hand and said, "You don't have to be strong all the time. I'm here." Helena took a deep breath. She looked at Davy sleeping, and answered, with the lightest voice she had ever spoken, "I know." For the first time, she truly knew. She, who was reborn from pain, had finally found a home, a love, a future, and a reason to smile without fear. And this time, nothing and no one would ever take that away from her.